welcome to the Spawn Chunks, episode number 87 for Monday, May the 4th, 2020, and it may be a galaxy far, far away, but it still feels like the future to me. My name is Jonny, the internet knows me as Pixel Riffs, and joining me, as always, is my good friend, Joel Duggan. Hi, Joel.
Hello, and happy Star Wars Day to you and all the people listening. I'm sure many of us has taken inspiration from Star Wars over the years, and May the 4th is always a fun Star Wars Day. And worth noting that now you can watch all of the Star Wars universe in one place. Mm-hmm. As of today, the 9th movie joins Disney Plus, and
not
everything is not a sponsor, but just as a Star Wars nerd, it's just nice to know that you can do all the cartoons, all the movies, whatever you want to do Star Wars, it is all available in one spot, which is really cool if you are one of those Star Wars fans. And I know that we've had, like Logical Geek Boy, one of our previous guests, he's a big Star Wars fan, and he's got some Minecraft Star Wars inspired builds and things like that. So
yes.
I think I find having stuff outside of Minecraft is always really good. People get too Minecraft focused sometimes, and they start looking at other Minecrafters for inspiration. I think sometimes we have to encourage people to just go watch other things, go get inspired, go watch Jurassic Park and then make Minecraft dinosaurs. Like, why not?
Yes.
But all of these kind of things, including a live birthday gift to myself, so it wasn't really a surprise, but we also had a number of other little things to go over in the rendered distance, which is the extended version of the podcast for our patrons. If you're interested in joining that, go to patreon.com/thespawnchunks. I almost said the Sizzle Cafe there by accident. But check out the Spawn Chunks on Patreon. We now do the show live. You can tune in 10 a.m. for Atlantic time. That's UTC minus 3 hours, and 2 p.m. in the UK. We do it the same time every Monday. There's a live chat that you can text chat in and talk to your friends while you listen to the show live. And we do both the Render Distance and the Spawn Chunks live every Monday now. So thank you to all the support on Patreon. It's also the first Monday of the month, so thank you to all of the patrons that continue to support the Spawn Chunks. You guys are fantastic. We've got a big meaty show, so what do you say we get into it?
Yes. If anybody wants to hear about Joel and my feelings about leaf blowers, definitely check out this week's Render Distance. So we have delightful news on your front for a start. You have been able to play Minecraft again. Talk us through it. How's that gone down?
I have indeed. It's taken a long time to sort out what may be the issue. Thanks again to Minipax for all the help in Discord. But essentially, my computer, my Windows PC, does not seem to do very well when it's taxed. So when the system is under a lot of pressure to do things, it tends to start dropping frames and do stuff like this. And we have now, after finding some forum posts to the effect, think that it might be my i5 9600K processor, which I thought was a good purchase at the time. I checked my logic on it. I checked with a couple other people that have built their PCs, and they thought, yeah, that sounds like a good PC or a good CPU. None of us realized that there's very specific problems with it. It's not like it crashes games. It's not like it's a bad gaming thing, but on some games and on some systems, it causes frame lag. So we might have the culprit. Unfortunately, I don't have another processor just kicking around to then swap out and test. However, Minipax gave me some feedback and saying, well, that holds true to the logic in that if we find a way, and as we have found ways to minimize the computer stress, your frame rate, while it doesn't solve itself, it's less intense. So it goes from something like a slideshow to something like a blur. Yeah. So the frame drops are happening so fast that your vision just gets blurry, which is still, motion sickness inducing. It's not great. But in more research, I was looking at different ways in Windows 10 to try and mitigate processor load. Because now that I knew that it was potentially the processor, I could ask more specific questions to get better answers. So I'll give people a tip. If you are having this issue with any game, because this is not just Minecraft for me, this is all games on my system, go to graphics settings. Now, I don't know how to get there other than typing it into the search in Windows start menu, where you can choose an app to set performance. There are classic apps, and then those classic apps are just listed as like Microsoft installed apps, like your basic Windows stuff.
Yeah.
Or universal apps. So universal apps allows you to browse and then add whatever outside app you want. And then you can tell the system, hey, make this give this priority, make this a high performance app. So when this app is running, you give it everything first, and then the rest of the things that are running, you give that second. Mm-hmm. And so I added Java to the graphic settings, and I said, crank it. Just give it all the juice.
It's like the Star
yeah.
Trek kind of like she's giving all she can, Captain.
Yeah, exactly.
That's basically
exactly.
happening
Sulu, take us out.
inside your CPU right now. Yeah,
it's funny. I watched those movies last weekend too.
Mm.
But anyway, so anyway, that has it's not solved the issue. It has patched it, but the combination of Optifine, still using pre-13. Well, actually, we left that out of the notes, but pre-14 and pre-15 came out this past weekend. But pre-13 is what I'm using for Optifine. So those things help Minecraft be more efficient. And then this is helping the processor be more efficient. And together, it means that I'm able to play Minecraft without barfing, which is fantastic news. Yay!
That's very good.
Yeah, barfing bad. So I feel like there is still a limit. Like yesterday was the first real test, and I was pretty done. I wasn't paying attention at the time. I did a 3-hour stream, which is about normal for me. But I took my third break, and it wasn't until I got up from my chair to take my third break that I realized how much of not a headache, but how much of an eye strain I felt.
Yeah.
And I can normally do a 4-hour stream when I'm having fun, no problem. Like I don't get tired. I'm still interested in what I'm doing. I don't find it that that stressful. But I noticed that at the end of the 3 hours, like I was pretty much done. I played for an extra 20 minutes just because I told people I would come back, and I kind of wrapped things up and ended it because I was pretty much done. But the first couple streams, I went into it gently because I wasn't sure how it was going to go. I didn't want to get anything too big. So we took the opportunity to fly around in creative, which confused a lot of people, to set up the new medieval fantasy building zone on the Citadel. So that's the more interesting thing that I did this past week in Minecraft was using command blocks, learning how to do the teleport command, thanks to Skulldaisy Gimp and a couple of other fun technical people in my chat room for walking me through the commands, because I do not understand Minecraft code. It's not at all logical to me. So I basically just had to get somebody to tell me what each number did and where to find them and what to do, and discovered a few things about what block to look at. And a good tip from Fixit was because he does this on Vaston. That's how they get around. When you want to travel to different cities on Vaston, you go into a boat and then you press a button, and then you're teleported to another build in the world, but you're on an exact copy of that boat. So the idea in the lore is that you've taken the boat, from one city to the next. In the Citadel, we don't have a final design yet for the world hub, but everything is all centered around the center of the world at coordinates, 1-1. And so we've got a bunch of different portals with air quotes because they're not nether portals. There's one nether portal that gets you there, but all the other portals are just glass panes with frames, They look like magical portals. I've made them look kind of like Stonehenge things with light in between them. But at the base of them, hidden in the stone, there's stone buttons that you can press. You can't use pressure plates because, as hilariously demonstrated on the stream, when a spider or cow, I can't remember which it was, an animal basically walked over the pressure plate and sent me teleporting. Right,
the nearest player gets teleported.
Exactly. Yeah. There's no way to actually focus it on a player in range. I wish you could set a range on them. I wish the command block would say teleport any player within 10 blocks, right? That would be fantastic, but you can't do that, at least not to my knowledge. If you can, write us at spunchuckmail@gmail.com and let me know. But anyway, so I set these up. There's a command block for the sake of not having to worry about which one to press. I've got a command block under each pillar in the frame. So you just walk up, hit any button that you see, and you get teleported to the medieval building zone. And the building zone is so big, I want to say it's probably the better part of 10,000 blocks by 8,000 blocks or something. It's this big continent place that we've decided to call home. And there's two different areas that I thought would be good for an arrival. And so rather than choosing, I use both. So if you get there and you have to go from one end of the continent to the other, it's a long way. So I thought we'd have an arrival zone in the south and an arrival zone in the north, kind of like an MMO. And so your starting zone in the new world, we built a little camp. And I've never built a tent in Minecraft before. It's not easy, by the way. Like a white, staging camp.
Yeah.
So I did that. Had a lot of fun with the fire pit. The fire pit was a cool way to mess around with cauldrons and a campfire and all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then I built a tower. I actually built a small tower with like a little buttress and a little house. And basically the insides are just like 5x5. You know, there's a furnace, a chest, a bed, and then a button to get back. So at the moment, everything just works with the commands. We're going to leave it at that for now. But essentially, once I have more time, I want to hook up these portals to payment systems. We've mentioned before on the Citadel that we don't have an economy because I put up all these community farms early on, so everybody just kind of has everything they need.
Yeah.
So we don't really have any kind of valuable commodity. So I thought, why not, instead of just making it free to teleport 9,000 blocks, because that's how far it is, we'll just have it cost something. Now, whether it's going to be 3 diamonds or a diamond block or whatever it is, these command blocks are redstone operated. So all I need to do is just have like basically like a sacrificial kind of like altar where you have to throw your diamond block that gets sucked up into a hopper. Make sure that the filter sees that and, you know, hits the command block and powers it, and then boom, you know, you get sent. I think I might make it free to come back, but then have it be something that costs you. The idea is to try and encourage players to not just constantly be going back and forth between their base and the new zone, because we're not resetting the Citadel. You know, we don't go back to a square one every time a new version of Minecraft comes out. So this way, it's kind of like you get that fresh new game experience, but you've got shulker boxes and elytra, and so you can kind of bring all the things that you want with you, like pack up your life, you know, and then go and decide for the next month or so, I'm going to build in the medieval zone and just kind of live there and be able to have that early Minecraft experience, that fresh, clean slate, which everybody's really excited about, but not have to go back to like wood tools and like no diamonds and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Are you thinking about doing something similar for the Nether in terms of the teleportation stuff? Are you thinking about teleporting people away to some of the newer biomes, or have you not explored enough of the Nether that you think that's going to be a problem?
I don't think it's going to be a problem, because in the Nether, our exploration has essentially just been in the 4 cardinal directions, and even then, not that far.
Sure, yeah.
So 500, 600 blocks in most directions. In some cases, it's a little bit farther. Like, for example, the modern city build is actually quite traversable in the Nether. So that's a portal that I did set up, but I'm not going to charge for that, because like you can really get there in the Nether in like a minute and a half. Like it's really not that long. I think the longest trek in the Nether is 1,000 blocks or more, and it's gonna be more than that. But it's the ice spikes, the first ice spikes biome that we had, it took forever to get there.
Yeah.
And the mesa and stuff like that. But in the mesa, we're actually going to be, I think that's the biome we're going to use for the western build. Like Alistair wants to build like a western town, so we're going to use the mesa. So that will end up having a portal as well, like a teleport portal. But no, because of how easy it is to see what we've done in the Nether and where we haven't gone, I'm going to take the is it MC selector? MCA selector?
MCA selector, yes.
MCA selector. So I'm going to use that, and I'm going to just trim all the chunks in the Nether that aren't essentially what we've got already. And I should be able to do that, because the only thing going north to the ice spikes is just the road. Like, so as long as I don't, and even if I did trim a chunk out of the road, I really don't care.
Yeah.
Like it's not the end of the world. So yeah, we're just going to trim the chunks back to nothing, because we do have some big builds to worry about. Like, you know, there's my fortress farm, there's the gold farm, a couple of big, you know, 256 diameter circles that we got to worry about. But like all that stuff is also central to the hub, that once you get outside the hub, we can really trim things back pretty easily. And if by chance I did trim out a nether portal that, you know, we needed, it's not going to be anything essential. It's not like it's going to be like the Guardian farm or something like that. It might be like someone found a biome that they wanted to go to or something like that, but it's not going to be a big deal. So we're just going to trim the chunks.
Yeah, and MCA selector is great for that, having filters that will allow you to filter by how long you've spent in each region is phenomenal, and that's kind of what I plan on relying on for my own Nether switch. I'm definitely going to keep the Nether hub there that I started building ages ago, and then when I heard there were going to be new biomes in the Nether, I decided to hold off building any more of it until those popped up and I could use some of the new blocks to decorate. And so, yeah, I have a bunch of nether portals just out in a bunch of different directions, and I'm not sure if you can find player-placed blocks. Like, if I could search for anywhere there was a nether portal already, just where some obsidian is, then maybe I could filter it that way. But even if not, I think I've spent enough time either flying exactly the same route each time so I know which sections I've explored and which I haven't, or at the very least I will have spent enough time around those portals to build them in the first place or to link them that I know not to delete those areas if I just filter my entire nether that way. So hopefully it's going to be a fairly smooth transition, and you can just blend in a couple of those biomes if there's just hard edges where they would have generated as something different, which, I think is very, very useful. Hats off to Quirtz, by the way, who actually now has one of my videos about how to use MCA Selector at the top of the GitHub page where you download MCA Selector to begin with. So if you want a tutorial, I'm just saying, endorsed by the creator now.
That's the tutorial that I use. And when I was messing around with it just a little bit earlier last week, just like looking at these new build zones, and what we would have to do, like I rewatched. I didn't watch the whole thing. I kind of fast forwarded to a point. I couldn't remember where the region files were, so I watched your video to get where I needed to go. But that's it for me. Like, what have you been up to in Minecraft the last week?
After messing around with Minecraft RTX in Bedrock Edition, I just want to put more color in things. I got a little bit like, the colored light effects in that Neon City that Elysium Fire built were just so cool, and I started to feel like, I want to use a bunch of colored concrete and glass and stuff. So I built a crystal cave that I had planned to build some sort of tunnel to the ski lift in the center of my mountain to begin with, because as we may have mentioned on the show before, having built an entire mountain range, a realistic ski lift that actually works is nigh on impossible, because I can't work out how to make a diagonal flying machine using redstone mechanics. So instead what I've done is make a vertical elevator platform. You just have to go to the center of the mountain in order to get up to the peak of it. I decided to build a tunnel that led players out that way, and filled that with a bunch of crystals made out of stained glass and concrete and ore blocks as well. That was kind of the flashy title I gave it, was look at me, I'm building with diamond ore. I thought it was kind of fun to do projects like that, and justifies my excuses for hoarding emerald ore blocks, which I typically do because I feel like you can, if you want emeralds, you can get them from villagers, right? So I decided not to fortune any of the emerald blocks I find. I try and silk touch all of them, and now I get to put them to use in builds, which is super fun to do.
Nice. So
I was working on that a little bit this week, doing some more kind of tidying up of the mountain in preparation for the episode 300 world tour of the survival guide, for which the mountain is not going to be done in terms of detail, but at least if I tour it, I can show you the stuff that I have done and everything else in the world besides. I have some fun ideas for episode 300, which I have showcased to you off mic, off camera, and I'm not going to give away too much because I want it to be a surprise, but I think people are going to really enjoy it. Outside of that, Skyblock has been going all right. I now have access to more farmable blocks thanks to the fact that I finally built a drowned farm, which now gives me access to clay along with the sand and gravel that are dropped by the other zombie variants. So now I feel like I have access to a bunch of building materials that I didn't before, and I've started building out custom biomes. So I've converted the tiny jungle island that you start off with a single jungle tree on it into an area that will now spawn ocelots if I have enough free grass around there. And I'm just kind of doing all of the stuff that makes Minecraft feel like Minecraft again when you've been looking at a void world for the last few months. So that's been super fun as well. But yeah, mainly kind of wondering how episode 300 of Survival Guide is going to go down, and honestly feeling myself very excited for the Nether update at this point, because that just leads to so much more stuff, and all of the ideas that I've been percolating in my head since finding out about some of these features can finally come to fruition.
Yeah, I'm excited to see how the Nether update is going to roll out. Like there's that, and we'll get into this a little bit later, but the anticipation of how the community is going to, because we have our own personal opinions, and we get some thoughts sent into us from listeners, but it's a small sample of the player base at large. And so I'm really curious to see what themes and memes and techniques and excitement or unexcitement, is going to happen when the Nether update happens. Like what stuff is really going to be grabbed by the community and what stuff is just not going to be, used at all.
Yeah.
And so I'm curious to see how that happens.
That's kind of the direction I wanted to take our main discussion, and we will get there. But first, we may as well cover this week's snapshot, and it's kind of telling at this point that maybe we are starting to wind down in terms of new features for the Nether update, and things are now focusing more on tweaks, bug fixes, and a couple more technical changes. In particular, Java Edition Snapshot 20W18A has changes to Redstone wire and a bunch of fixed bugs. So to just briefly recap Mojang's explanation of the changes to Redstone wire, because I know a lot of people probably clench a little bit when they hear changes are coming to Redstone. So the block state, rendering, and behavior of Redstone wire in this snapshot are now more in line with each other. Redstone will provide power to blocks on all sides it shows a visual connection to, and not do so on those sides without a visual connection. So this was something that was a bit inconsistent before this snapshot, and they are attempting to make it more intuitive by making the visual indicator and the mechanical indicator kind of a bit more consistent. So a single redstone wire or redstone dot is now represented as a cross, which will be familiar to Bedrock Edition players where it was always like that. A wire on top of a block redirected from below will power the sides it is redirected to now. For example, a fence gate above the redirecting wire will be powered. Wires that redirect upwards to wires on non-conductive blocks used to only be redirected visually. Now this redirection applies to their behavior as well, and that's probably the biggest change here. A wire that is redirected to go over a block will now always provide power to that block. This is most noticeable when the wire has a signal strength of 1. Some technical changes include adding a status enable option to the server.properties file, which can make a server appear offline in the multiplayer screen, even if it is not. Added control over how much entity data a server sends to clients, and added advancement system changes. There are additional changes to entity broadcasting related to servers, and a player check being added to every trigger except where this is impossible. More information about those on Minecraft.net, because those are a little bit more technical, a little bit more map makery and kind of technical side of things, server hosting side that we don't typically get into on this show because of a general lack of our own knowledge. There are some noteworthy bug fixes, a lot of them actually, but here are a few we've picked out. Broken spawn rates in soul sand valleys and warped forests, so those should hopefully be fixed. Hopefully that means slightly fewer ghasts. Target blocks are transparent and do not transfer redstone signals. That has now been fixed, and that has quite a good tie-in to redstone wire functionality now. There are quite a few changes and refinements to strider spawning and group behavior. Chain blocks are now able to be waterlogged, and the entity distance slider was showing no difference between 100% and 500%, and we reported on this last week where it didn't really seem to be making a difference to how far away entities like mobs would render. That has now been fixed, so the slider actually does what it says on the tin.
I've got some questions about Redstone, but before we get into that discussion, I thought it was worth noting that there's been quite a few changes over the last few weeks to Minecraft Earth. We had a couple of people tweet us still playing Minecraft Earth and quite excited about it, and thought we should look into those changes just to kind of maybe relay them here on the show. So we're not necessarily going to be getting into a big discussion about Minecraft Earth because I haven't played in a very long time.
Same.
And I want to reiterate that it's mostly because it just wasn't necessarily for me. Not that I didn't like it. Also, I have an older device, and so it really wasn't worth the 15 minutes that I got before my battery died.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the main reason why I stopped playing. But there was a March 25th, 2020 update. So we're a little bit late getting to this. But the quote on that update was, "We want to help flatten the curve. The health and safety of our players is incredibly important to the Minecraft Earth team. In accordance with WHO guidelines, we've made the following changes to empower Minecraft Earth players to continue to build, craft, adventure, and mine from safety at home. Increased tappable spawn rate, increased tappable density, and added the ability to spawn adventures anywhere." So basically you can just play Minecraft Earth like you once did, but instead of having to walk around your neighborhood, you could basically walk around your house.
Yeah.
Minecraft Earth R16 Patch Notes from April 14th, 2020. Show off your creations to your friends with build plate sharing. Friends can interact, break blocks, and build, but the changes they make will not be permanently saved. New adventures have been added to the mix, and a new mob, the Spotted Pig. There's also bug fixes and highlights. Mobs are making a splash. We've added back the splash sounds that mobs make when they're in water. And the Iron Golem, what a knockout. We've reduced the Melon Golem kickback so that they won't push mobs as far as before. And I think this might be a typo, but someone correct me if I'm wrong. Melon Golem? Is there a Melon Golem?
I think what they've done is made an Iron Golem that you make with a melon for a head instead of a pumpkin. and it's another mob variant. Like they've got a furnace golem as well that looks a lot more kind of like it looks a bit like Bastion from Overwatch. It's got a kind of blast furnace in the chest or the head or something, I think. And I've seen a few of these kind of images on the Minecraft Earth Twitter account. I haven't actually looked at them in game myself, but with the additions of all of these new mob variants, they are not just varying passive mobs. There are variants to utility mobs like golems as well.
Oh, interesting. Cool. And then in the most recent update, which was April 28th, are you up for the challenge? Build, craft, and collect your way through an all-new season challenge system to earn exclusive rewards. Season challenges are only around for a limited time, so don't dally. So it sounds like they're adding quite a lot for you to do in Minecraft Earth, even though a lot of people, as they should be, are staying home. Keep track of the blocks, items, and mobs you've collected in the new player journal. That, to me, sounded like something that I felt was lacking when I was playing the game. So that sounds really cool. A fancy new night-themed build plate can now be found in store. You can own the night. And new mobs. With the addition of the player journal, we wanted to add some diversity to the mobs that you know and love. Please welcome the whole herd of new mob variations to collect. And I'll read through these quick, but some of them sound really cool. Amber chicken, stormy chicken, sunset cow, ashen cow, piebald pig, pale pig, flecked sheep, rocky sheep, I want to know what that one looks like, vested rabbit, and muddy foot rabbit. So that wraps up the notes that I picked up from the patch notes on Minecraft Earth. I'll have a note and link to that in the show notes for this week. If people want to check that out, that'll be at thespawnchunks.com. Of course, minecraft.net is where you can go to just read these right now. I'm curious about what we talked about early on when we were reviewing Minecraft Earth, about how the developments and the playground of Minecraft Earth might influence Minecraft Prime.
Yeah.
You know, things like a sunset cow or a rocky sheep, like new mob variants, I think is something that we all would like in Minecraft. And really all it involves is just new textures. You know, it's similar to how we've got mushrooms and cows, right? And brown mushrooms. Like, it's just fun. Like, it adds some variety. If you have a field of cattle, it would be nice if they weren't all exactly the same. I think that kind of stuff, I'm hoping that kind of stuff comes over.
Yeah.
Have you been able to get into Minecraft Earth at all in the last little while?
I have not, and it's not because of any lack of interest in the game itself, really. Like, the functionality of the app is great, and the fact that they've been making accessibility changes to it to make sure that people can play from home is great. From what I understand, there are these new adventure crystals that you can now acquire through tappables, and that's what allows you to spawn an adventure basically wherever. And I think I did touch on that briefly, but we didn't really go into Minecraft Earth too much after that in previous shows. And I think the thing for me is that the experience of Minecraft Earth is so tied to the idea of being able to go outside. And it's not that the game itself is prompting that anymore, but it's how I want to experience Minecraft Earth is with the intended behavior of being able to go out and walk around the world, take the air, take some exercise, go out to your local park and just wander around. And it's not that Minecraft Earth is tied to that anymore, but in my brain, having done a bunch of that basically so I could do research for the podcast and make a couple of videos for my channel, I kind of can't separate the two. I really want to be able to go out and walk and do that stuff again. And I collected a lot of tappables when I would ride the bus into and from town. I kind of miss that as part of the process. So it's not that I wouldn't get into Minecraft Earth from home. It's just that I think I want to start playing it again when we're more able to go freely outside and just go and hang out somewhere. I also want to be able to do multiplayer stuff with it, and I think there might be more people picking it up as a result of it being more accessible to them now, and the fact that build plate sharing has been added in is a huge addition, and obviously this has all been the early access version of the app, so it's not like we weren't expecting these features to be rolled out slowly. But I think player interaction and multiplayer action was the thing that was missing from it before. You could only really interact with people's builds if you were there with them in person, whereas a lot of Minecraft gameplay happens across continents, you know, across the world because of people playing on multiplayer servers. So I feel like, yeah, the changes are great, and it's really interesting to see them adding even more mob variants than they started with, And like you, I am hoping that those are effectively a testing ground for what could potentially be added into Minecraft Prime in future. But yeah, I don't see myself playing Minecraft Earth really until I can get out and about, just because I enjoy the experience so much more that way.
I'm just quickly doing some Googling while you were chatting there, and one of the mob variants that wasn't listed here, it's probably because it came out before March 25th, is the woolly cow. And it looks like, is it the long-haired Scottish Highland cow?
Yeah, they
I
look
can't
like
remember.
Highland cows, don't they, with the
Highland
fringe?
cows, yeah. Yeah, the fringe. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's really cool. Like really cool. And and so you could like if you could control the mobs in your areas, like as you're building your world, and if you've got like a mountain village, it would be so cool to have woolly cows instead of just regular, like what look like dairy cows,
Yeah,
right? Like the black and white spots and stuff like that. So I looked up the other sheep. I thought the rocky sheep might have been some sort of indication as to like the ram, like the mountain goat, what that might look like. But they're just wool color variants, like mottled wool, brown
yeah.
wool. They're nothing too crazy. Same with the rabbits. The rabbits just have different. It's the same model. It just has different textures. Brown feet versus gray feet. That
Yeah,
kind of thing.
I recall us having an email a couple of shows ago about from somebody who said that dog variants should appear in different biomes. So having like a Burmese mountain dog appearing in more mountainous regions. It would be so cool if, like villagers do when they have different skins for the different villager biome variants. I feel like that'd be kind of a fun addition in future to have as different types of cows appearing in mountain biomes versus plains, for example. There'd be some fun stuff to be had there. And who knows, there's probably somebody who's done that with the sort of variable texture settings on Optifine already, but I feel like assigning them to different biomes feels like it makes a lot more sense.
Yeah, no, I agree. Getting into the snapshot changes, I think the redstone wire changes, while subtle and will take a bit of getting used to for people that have been playing the game for a while, I think are going to make redstone very accessible for new people.
Yes.
And I don't want to say new players. I want to say new people to redstone. So you've been playing this game for 3 or 4 years and you find redstone intimidating, then I feel like these changes, because when I first started working with redstone, I found the redstone dot and what it powered and what it didn't power frustrating. Things like locking hoppers, even though the hopper is not connected to the redstone dot. Like it just does it power the space above the redstone dot, or does it power 2 spaces above the redstone dot? Like all that kind of stuff I found very confusing. So the fact that it's now a cross, and that as you place blocks around it, it defaults to pointing towards the block it's powering and not pointing towards the block that it doesn't. And I think that's cool. I do find how they describe, and even how people have visually tried to show the way that redstone is redirected and how it applies things upwards. So I always find the word upward very confusing, because it does, to me, it doesn't sound like a real word, even though I know it is. But like redirecting redstone upward to me sounds purely vertical, but it's not. It's vertical and horizontal. It's a 45-degree, like you're going up to the block next to you. You're not going straight up. And so by doing so, having a fence gate like above a redstone cross now, which is what they're going to be, will the redstone not power the cross until it's redirected? Like that stuff I just found super confusing. I've even watched a couple of videos that have helped, and I want to give these guys a shout out, because I mean they're always really good snapshot videos. From Exumavoid did a snapshot video, but then Mumbo Jumbo did just the redstone changes. That's all he talked about in this 10-minute video that he did. And there's a lot of visual aids that both of those guys use to explain what's going on. Mumbo got into the target block and how the target block now redirects redstone and how it's a big deal.
Yes.
But my thought was, don't all blocks redirect redstone? Like if you put I guess it has to be a redstone component to redirect it, right? Like that's
not all redstone components even do that. So here's an example, right? You put a line of redstone dust on the ground. If you put a piston somewhere along that line, not at one of the ends, but along the side of the line, the redstone dust will not automatically redirect into that piston. It does that on Bedrock Edition, doesn't do it on Java. And that's one of the big distinctions between the two. And that means that if you light up that redstone dust, because it's not directly powering a block that is adjacent to the piston doesn't activate. And having a target block somewhere along that line, it now does, and that powers the target block. So the target block is not only a target for players now, it is also a target for redstone current, which is kind of interesting to me, and a good block to do that with, especially because it's new. So everybody can get used to these changes at the same time, instead of them being changes to mechanics they have been using for years. So I feel like that was quite a smart move to incorporate the target block into that.
And Mumbo got into that in his video about how the target block is now this really cool thing, that it's a subtle change, but it makes so many more things possible. And he was using, like, 3x3 piston doors, how he used to run into this problem, and now this target block solves that. And he was basically redoing a bunch of things that were broken by this change, but because of the target block changes, they can be fixed. They just have to be built in a different way. So the mechanics and the possibility of building this particular function, I can't remember what he called it, like a redstone coder. Essentially, it's basically you spin an item around in a frame, and each level gives off a different, each turn gives off a different level of redstone output. And he was lighting up torches in a row based on a selecting system. And so with that, he had to rebuild it using the target block. But what I didn't understand was it was a triple piston extender, and he was using the target block to redirect redstone, which was that I understood. And it was because the target block is a solid block, he can use it to power other things. That I understood. But how he was powering a piston at an angle, and I guess that's the quasi connectivity that's still in the game.
Yeah.
And so, but he didn't mention that. And so it was still like, well, okay, I understand all the new mechanics, but then nothing, like, this part didn't make sense. And so, like, I feel like there's still a little bit that they could do, because when I look at some redstone stuff and you hit the button and everything works the way you expect it to, you're like, okay, cool, I understood all that. But I still find that there's many redstone components, especially when I'm watching somebody that's, an advanced user like, Mumbo or somebody else. And they press the button and I see 7 things happen, and I understand 6 of them, but that 7th, I'm just like, whoa, what just happened there?
Yeah.
Like, I even tried to adjust my concrete maker yesterday live on the stream and ended up blowing up part of my elevator.
Oh no.
I mean, it was minor. It was not a big deal. Like, we didn't even lose any components. It was fine. But essentially, I tried to, I'm using TNT that I'm crafting. It's not a duper. So I'm trying to make more efficient use of the TNT. So I tried to slow down the rate at which the TNT is dispensed. But the way that this is built, because the clock I'm using, I think, was built around the fact that the TNT is coming from a duper, it's just this constant stream, right? So because it doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought the clock and the TNT thing was separate, but it turns out that the timing of the release of the TNT being slower also lengthens the clock of how long it's being held before it detonates. So it was held too long and then it blew up too early. And so that I was like, well, I didn't think that that's how this worked. But I think what I've discovered is that instead of having 2 different clocks, I have 1 clock and a clock extension. And that's what's happening. So I think part of it is that I have to start doing a little bit more redstone from scratch. But like I said, I think that these changes make it more accessible for the basic things. Like when you put something down and the redstone line goes to a redstone line with an offshoot to the right, that to me is very visually clear. Oh, the redstone is going to power that thing.
Yeah.
Right. Like that to me makes sense. But I still don't understand about the whole fence gate thing, like how the fence gate is being powered by redstone going underneath it, but not touching it. I understand a dot, or a pressure plate, but like how powered redstone doesn't power the gate until the redstone goes up a block next to it, to me does not make any sense.
Yeah. For me, redstone has always been one of those things that is a nightmare to explain theoretically. So these are examples where, to be fair, I have to give a shout out for a start to Mojang for communicating these changes by putting a screenshot in the blog post with examples of how redstone wire was going to behave. Very smart move, because for folks like me who would just read that changelog and glaze over, it was very, very helpful to see an actual image of how some of that stuff was going to happen. I also, while I'm giving shout outs, want to mentioned the very level-headed response to Redstone changes from the prominent members of the technical community. And they know who they are at this point. You guys probably do as well. But folks like Ilmango and Mumbo Azuma, Cub Fan, various people. I saw Cub did a solid thread on Twitter where I think he was just getting used to the changes. But I think everyone has been looking at these with a very calm perspective and not going, oh no, like I think the comments section for each of these people is often prone to hyperbole because they want people to flip out a little bit. They're kind of they want people to be upset about stuff because they want there to be some sort of drama. But I think the creators themselves and the people who are more involved with the Redstone community are seeing these as good changes because it's codifying Redstone, it's making it more accessible to people, it's being logical again, but not necessarily removing all of the stuff that they liked about it, with a couple of minor exceptions that they've kind of shrugged off and gone, kind of sucks that works the way it does, but we understand why. And I think that's very good. Yeah, there's a couple of things that I'm still not sure if they're going to be quite the same, but again, I have to get in there and do it practically and actually fiddle around with the stuff myself, because otherwise trying to puzzle it out in my head without practical examples in front of me, all of my knowledge of Redstone falls apart. So yeah, I think it's going to be an interesting time to get hold of things, but from what I've seen, the reaction has been fairly positive. And as for the quasi-connectivity thing, I think that is one of those things which is never going to be quite something that can be explained by the mechanics of the game, but is the holdout that the technical community has, where they're like, we don't really want this to go away, because that breaks a lot of the stuff we have related to pistons and maybe flying machines and stuff like that, and all of the kind of stuff that allows for more advanced creations with pistons kind of tends to rely on that functionality. And if that goes away just because it isn't super logical and doesn't seem very realistic, then that takes away part of the game that is enjoyable. So unless they can find some kind of way of explaining that, how that happens, I feel like it's always going to be one of those things that just you have to kind of write off as Redstone magic and then just get used to how it functions. But yeah, I think the Redstone changes by and large are very good. I do like the fact that target blocks redirect them. Like I said, that feels kind of great. Moving on to some of the other stuff about this snapshot, the bug fixes are lovely. Very happy that chain blocks can be waterlogged now. That felt like an obvious one. People want to make like anchors for ships. And the first thing I saw was people using the new Lodestone block in combination with chains to make like undersea mines, which I thought looked really aesthetically very cool. And
you could even make things look bigger. Like you could even make a bigger mine with like walls, like stone walls on the ends and the top, and like have it look a little bit more spiky, and like you could do some really cool stuff.
Exactly, yeah. And yeah, if that Soul Sand Valley thing, if I understand it correctly, that does hopefully mean that people are going to be less bombarded by ghasts whenever they go into Soul Sand Valleys. Yeah,
that's how I read that too. It felt like a response to the bug, that there was a lot of mobs, and it wasn't a very pleasant place to be. I think it was basically a response to this feels bad as a player, and so we don't want that to happen.
Yes, and ultimately that comes down to balancing the game ready for hopefully a relatively soon Nether update release. So let's get on to talking about that via our chunk mail for this week, which I think you're going to read for us.
Yes, it's a bit of a long one. So, and I think I forgot to put the person's name. Did they sign it? They did. It's from Poggin. And this is about responding to, we'll say, like feedback that they're seeing, that Poggin is seeing from the community. Hey, Pix and Joel. Hope you're both having a fantastic day. My condolences to Joel if you're still having computer issues. Well, we're halfway there. I always enjoy listening to the show and hearing your thoughts on all things Minecraft. Best Minecraft podcast as far as I'm concerned. Well, thank you very much, Poggin. I've been listening to this show for a while now, and I have a somewhat more philosophical question for you guys. While I always look forward to hearing what you have to say about the new content and the features, it always gets me thinking. I get the sense that Minecraft's audience has changed quite a bit since I started playing back in the beta days. I'm not necessarily talking about the age range, as Minecraft has always been appealing to young and old, but more of what we expect the developers to do with the game and how that affects what we think of new features. A lot of the scrutiny I see on new snapshots is all about how it changes the meta of the game and if the feature is as fleshed out as it should be. While I think constructive criticism is vital to making a good game, I wonder if we push our luck too far with what we think a feature should do or look like without having an understanding for what it actually takes to implement the features in the game. I probably sound like an old man, but I remember when things like Redstone and slime balls were utterly useless. Nights were much darker and harder without torches, and food was a pain to carry around in large quantities, and yet we all played anyway. Why? I believe not because it was a good game, but because it inspired us. It challenged us to be creative, share it with our friends, and have an adventure. It gives a childlike wonder that pushed us to something epic, and then tell our friends about the simple block game that we had found. I think that's something we've lost touch with. The ability to take the game for what it is, a silly block game that brings joy and simplicity. To summarize, I feel like many players take Minecraft too seriously. I love the game and I want it to be the very best it can be, but I also don't want to sacrifice that childlike wonder in the name of making objectively better. Minecraft is what you make of it. Do you think we overemphasize the quality of new features or have similar thoughts? Would also love to hear about your first experiences, stories with the game. Sorry for the long-winded letter, but I really wanted to share and hear your thoughts. Have a great day, and thank you for all the work you put into this great quality content. Sincerely, Poggin. Thanks for the great email, Poggin. Like really, really, really good. And thanks for the question. It's we're gonna get into it, I think, kind of like all at once in our discussion. But to kind of springboard us, I think while I understand the nostalgia and the, I guess, knowledge that you bring to the conversation, having played the game since beta, I think it's a little unfair to compare current Minecraft to beta and say, like, you guys should all be super thankful for all the wonderful stuff that you have. Because back in my day, and I know I'm putting words in your mouth, Poggin, things were much different and much harder and much simpler, and we didn't have all this cool stuff. I think that you have to take the game as it is currently. And you have to, players are only able to really, I think, in the last three, I look at the game in terms of, like, I want to say Minecraft 1.13. 1.13 on is when it starts to feel kind of like the current game to me. And so I criticize it and I think about it in those terms because I think that that's kind of like how a lot of people tend to think about it more recently. And so when it comes to criticizing the game, I don't think I personally lose track of what it is. I think it's a lot easier to talk at length when you're having a creative and critical discussion about something than it is to say, like, well, if I really like something, like, I don't know, the chain block, I like it. You know, I I don't have a lot to say about it other than just all the cool stuff that I can build with it. I need more time with it, but like I can't really fill paragraphs and paragraphs about how much I like the chain block. I can fill paragraphs about how much I don't like Blackstone though, you know? So, and I mean, it's partly human nature. But I think that, you know, the expectation of the Minecraft audience and what I think Poggin is tapping into is something we mentioned either last week or the week before, where some of the changes that have been coming to Minecraft, not all of them, some of them that you and I tend to like hone in on, Johnny, are like they kind of defy logic. It's like, well, that's a change, but it doesn't really make sense. You know, you have a community of people, and once you're really in tune with that community and you know what they're asking for, and Mojang knows what they're asking for because the community is loud, you know, and there's a lot of them. And then Mojang goes, cool, here's this other thing. And the community goes, wait, what? Like, we're all asking for the same thing, and you gave us the other thing. Now, sometimes the other thing is awesome, you know, and you don't expect it. Target block, for example, right? But other times it's like cracked, I can't even remember the whole name, polished, cracked Blackstone bricks. And everybody's like, okay, like, do we need this? And I think that's where you start to get the expectant community. Like everyone has ideas. It's a creative game and they all have ideas about how it can be improved. And I don't envy Mojang in trying to please everyone all the time because you can't. but I can see both sides of this. I can understand the whole like it's a block game. Like everybody just chill out and have fun. Uh, but I think it gets a lot more complicated because there's a lot of people, my co-host included, that make their living off of this block game.
Yeah,
You know?
that was gonna be my first point. Was it is difficult not to take something seriously when ultimately it is your career now.
Yeah.
And while a lot of people are able to make a living out of variety gaming, the thing about Minecraft is it has such a loyal audience and such a focused audience, and the game itself has the potential to provide near limitless content for you if you want to put that amount of time into it. Often it's very difficult to just see it as a game and transition from that game to another game you're playing because your audience is here to watch you play Minecraft. And I think when you have that mindset and when people are making a living out of making videos out of Minecraft and pushing the limits of what they think the game is capable of, you are going to want the features that come out to be more robust and have more mileage you can get out of them so that you can push things even further with those features. So when people call for stuff like depth of features, oftentimes they are asking for, hey, let me spend more time with this, so I have more content, so that I have a little bit more stuff to explore in game. Even for more casual players, it lengthens the appeal of the game for them. And Minecraft doesn't have to be the only game that you play, but for some people it is the only game that they feel like they can have that level of success with, if that's what they're after. It's the only game that allows them to create the stories they want to create without having to learn to code games all by themselves. And I think we bring into games like Minecraft on a cultural level what the stuff that we bring in is we are looking for something. We are looking for something that's going to reflect our lives, reflect society in general. So I think there's a lot of layers to this, and it's kind of difficult as a philosophical question, but I feel like Minecraft, for a lot of people, has become an ingrained part of their culture, and not taking it seriously is kind of the same as not taking politics seriously or money seriously or something like that. It seems so strange to compare a video game to these like concepts that have been with us for a long time, but Minecraft is that to a lot of people now. And it's probably the first game that's ever really been like this. I know there are a lot of games that have been like vital to the development of video games in general, but I feel like in terms of the lifespan, the potential, the amount of people it has reached, best-selling game ever over here, by the way, is really something different. It's this odd sort of phenomenon. And here we are, of course, on a podcast about Minecraft. We can't help but take it seriously because that is bread and butter for us.
Yeah, exactly.
It helps the podcast to not it helps us sustain the concept of what we do on this show, to not then turn around every 5 minutes and go, why are we talking about this so much? It's a video game. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And it's like we are making it matter by our participation in the thing. We choose what's important to us, and what's important to a lot of people in the circles that we run in right now is Minecraft. And so we have to study these things and critique them as closely as we would study and critique other aspects of our own lives, which are this important. So if you're the kind of person who would unionize your workplace because you didn't feel like you were being treated well, I mean, it's a weird comparison, but you can compare that to the community giving feedback on how Minecraft is developed, because they're like, this is where we live. This is the circumstance in which we work. Therefore, we feel like our conditions should be a certain way. Now, there's a lot less at stake there. There's a lot of different stuff on the line, and it's not like you can roll back your job to a previous version. But there's certainly a lot to be said for Minecraft effectively being a way of life for a lot of people now. And a lot of people do need to take it that seriously if it's going to be their way of life. That's the way I would put it anyway.
And I think it's also something worth pointing out, because I communicate this a lot of times to new players, specifically parents of new players. Minecraft is as much a tool as it is a game.
Yes, it's an artistic medium for a lot of people as well.
Yeah, exactly. And so you think about things like, for me, Photoshop. That is a tool. It's a tool that I pay for. Granted, I only paid for Minecraft once, but like to draw the comparison, I use Photoshop almost daily. When they change Photoshop and it's not for the better, you bet your butt they hear about it, because it affects a lot of people professionally. It affects a lot of people, even if you're just a hobbyist, like even if you're just like a photographer, and it changes the way that you do things, because it's a tool. And people don't think like, it's just Photoshop. What's the big deal? It's a big deal because it's an application. If an app on your phone that's part of the function, not part of its entertainment, starts to malfunction, then people get pretty upset. And I think about, say, like, changes and things to Minecraft, as far as it's being used in education. Like if something that Mojang does breaks one of the things that it's a key element of Minecraft education, that would be bad. And the community would be, I want to say more justified, but just as justified in speaking up about that, because if it's affecting education, and I think everybody around would say that's a good thing. You don't want to mess with that,
Yeah.
And so that's, I think the Minecraft as a tool, I think, is also something we have to remember when we're being critical of it. And yeah, and I think also that none of this, like, while every company always wants success, I don't necessarily think that Minecraft was like setting out to be the biggest game in the world. So like it's a good problem to have, but I think it's still a problem to have. Like there's a lot to juggle, and so I know we do mention it from time to time on the podcast, but I definitely want to say that in all of the criticisms that we make on the show and anything that we do say, we always try to do our best to present a balanced conversation and be critical, but we do so with the knowledge of the sheer amount of effort, because it is their job. Like it's their day to day. It's their developers. Like, so we understand that the sheer amount of work that goes into this. So we're not saying like, this is useless or I don't like this, and disregarding the fact that, a lot of work and stuff went into that. That's never the case.
And this all ties in quite neatly to what I wanted to discuss this week, which was effectively our thoughts on the features of the Nether updates so far. Because we've been breaking it down week by week in the snapshots, but now, as I said earlier, it starts to be looking like it's more or less feature complete, and what's left is tweaking and bug fixing and the polish of the update. I thought it'd be worth us discussing what we like about the Nether update before it gets a full release and we realize how little we're actually going to use Striders, even though we like them a lot, or before we do a complete 180 and decide we actually really like Blackstone now that we're building with it in our existing worlds, and before Pigstep becomes the only song anyone ever listens to. So in the show notes, you'll have a link to the Minecraft wiki page, which has a helpful breakdown of the new additions. The link is to Java Edition 1.16, but you'll find a lot of the stuff in there is going to be linked to Bedrock Edition as well. So I thought we'd go over some of our serious thoughts here about the positives, negatives, and stuff we're kind of neutral on about the update so far. And yes, keeping in mind that this is all a video game and that all of these things have been developed by people for our general enjoyment, but we're going to be getting more value out of them, I think, than anyone ever expected to get out of Minecraft. So let's drill down and take a look at what we actually like and dislike about the Nether update as it stands.
So where do you want to start? You want to start with, like, say, positives and stuff?
I think let's start with positives. We'll wrap back around to positives. We'll do the positivity sandwich where we put some of the stuff we dislike in the middle, and then we'll kind of wrap up at the end. But personally, the new biomes is probably where I want to start, because they were one of the first things we knew about from Minecon. They were one of the first things we really got, give or take basalt deltas, which were added later. And there's not a single one I dislike in the new biomes. They all look great to me. Aesthetically, warped forests are my favorites. I love the neon blue in the Nether. I really feel like it stands out in a really interesting way. Basalt deltas, now they've been added, are a close second. They're so atmospheric, and the biome fog color also helps that a lot. I can see a lot of people using that for creative builds. Just being able to build in an area in the Nether that has that fog color is going to be super fun to add some atmosphere. But I think, personally, I really like all of the new biomes and the way they look naturally when you encounter them. How do you feel about the biomes so far, Joel?
Actually, the biomes is what, like, without going through like a giant list of all the changes, like when I just kind of think about our conversations over the last few weeks, biomes are the big thing that come to mind as like I've got nothing bad to say. Like, it just looks so different compared to what we have currently in the Nether, and in all, like, the crimson forests are just rich and vibrant and fun. The warped forests are they just kind of scream Minecraft. Like it's just like only Minecraft would put that color in the Nether, and it
Mm-hmm.
works. Like it totally works. Like so that kind of stuff is great. Like this, they feel organic. It makes sense that there's just mushroom trees everywhere because the Nether feels like a giant cave. So like everything feels very underground, despite that they're adding quote unquote trees and bushes and grass. Um, I love the deltas. I like the changes that they made to the deltas recently, where they added more lava to them, so that they feel a little bit more. I don't want to say designed. They feel a little bit more like Swiss cheese as opposed to just giant chunks.
I kind of
Like
think of them as like tide pools now. Basically,
yeah.
it's like
Mm-hmm.
you imagine
Mm-hmm.
them being on the edge of a lava ocean, and these are tide pools forming as though there is any kind of
Yeah.
tide anywhere in Minecraft. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think that kind of suits the Delta vibe of them very well, and I think they've got a lot of really interesting formations. The
Yeah.
blocks they are made of, on the other hand, I have less positive things to say about, still because I'm not the biggest fan of Blackstone outside of the context of the biome. Like, I really think that the basalt and Blackstone combination looks great in situ in the Nether. And I think that's my kind of flip side to the discussion about biomes, is that basalt could be my new favorite building block. Maybe I need more time with it. And I feel the same about warped and crimson wood. I haven't really seen many builds that people have done in the snapshots that make them look better than they do in their native biomes. The idea being that if players are going to be moving around all of these blocks, if they want to be, repurposing them for their own builds, I want to see something that wows me about it and kind of justifies the existence of all of this new stuff. And I really haven't seen anything that has felt like it's anything more than an expansion to the palette rather than a revolution in building. And it doesn't necessarily need to be treated as a revolution in building, but maybe just the fact that they added 2 new wood types for the first time since, I think, Minecraft 1.6 or 1.7, it feels like 10 updates on, anything new like this should be a complete revelation to the player, and maybe I'm just expecting too much of those. But yeah, I still don't think I've seen any builds that make warped and crimson wood look any better than they do just natively in warped and crimson forests. Like, I think those biomes are so cool that if you take the blocks out and put them in any other context, I'm not as convinced. And I know you probably feel the same about those. In fact, you probably feel like a little bit more negative about the warped and crimson wood based on what you've said in the past. Has that changed at all for you?
No, and I think, I mean, I want to say, with an asterisk here, that I've not been playing in the snapshots for a number of reasons. Obviously, everybody knows about my computer issues, but I've not been playing in the snapshots because I'm to a point now, after we covered on the show, I don't want to spoil it. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? Like,
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
not in a snapshot world. I'm not playing on a snapshot server, even though I was very, graciously invited to one. I was just like, I kind of like pop in and creative to just do a little bit of research and take a screenshot for the show. And that's kind of where I stop, because I want to be able to fly around on the Citadel or, adventure in the Nether and find stuff, and
Yeah.
see how it actually works in game. I'm sure that I will probably find a use in my new medieval fantasy area for warped planks for a roof of a wizard tower.
Yeah.
There are very few uses for it. And I find that more and more as I try to think about, because people will say like, well, why don't you like these new textures or these new blocks? And I think where I start to narrow in is like when things don't have more than one real perceived use.
Yeah, when
You
they
know, like
start
it's
to
just,
feel more specialized, for
yeah.
sure. Yeah.
But specialized are things like cauldrons, anvils. I'm struggling to find other things, but like observers. Um, what's the new? Not the lodestone. Is it the lodestone?
Yeah.
Yeah, the lodestone. So the lodestone's a very specific block, right? But like when you get into some of these other things, like they're all very specific because they have very specific functions. And you can get some multiple functions out of anvils, like you can use them to build different things. But when it comes to things like the crimson wood, like it's really narrow. But it's not just one block; it's planks and stairs and slabs and trapdoors and like so there's all these
Fences,
different, yeah.
boats, pressure
And they've
plates.
added all of these things, and the color, the texture is so mono use that you're just like, well, great, you've added what, 7 or 8 different blocks to the game that I can only use one way, which
Mm.
is to build a bright neon, house in the Nether. or a bright neon house, neither of which I want to do, and I'm not alone in that. Like, I'm not the sole person that's just like, woof, these are too bright. Like it's a lot of people are kind of like, because I've seen some of the Minecrafters that I watch, and they put them down like, yeah, so this is gonna be exciting, and then they kind of go, oh. And you can tell that just like, I don't want to say anything too terrible about this, but I don't have anything good to say, and so you can just feel the tongue tie, and that's where I start to feel where things get where I get lost on the new textures. And I want to be very clear. I don't mind that there's new blocks. I don't think adding new blocks are bad, because at least as Java players, we have the ability to change textures and just kind of do stuff. I've done that with the nether bricks. I don't use the wine colored nether bricks. I make them black because I wanted black slabs and stairs in the game. Now I have native black slabs and stairs in the game. So if I wanted to, I could apply this nether brick texture that I currently have to blackstone. And then I can go back to using the wine colored nether bricks, and then I could have both. There are positive things that you can pull from this. So I don't think new blocks are bad, but I find that the new textures are a little, I don't think they've been thought out. I don't think they've been thought of outside of the nether. And in some cases they're really bizarre. Like, I mean, we won't get into a tirade about Blackstone, but it is my least favorite thing about the new update. Like, it is by far the bottom of the list, to the point where, like, it's not even something that it's so, to me, it's so, I don't want to say useless. It's so close to the bottom that it's frustrating. It's frustrating to see so many variants of this block that I have no interest in using, because I find the texture too noisy, and they've got like 3 different variants of walls that you can't tell the difference between. And then you have no quartz walls. There's no smooth stone stairs. There's no smooth stone walls. So why not give us one blackstone wall and then use the other walls as other things that are going to be useful in more than one situation?
Yeah.
And I understand it's the nether update, and those other 2 blocks that I mentioned. Well, actually, the quartz is nether, but like, smooth stone is not necessarily a nether update, but the target block is not specifically to the nether, and that's coming in the nether update. Chains also not specific to the nether. So I feel like there should be a little bit more of a balance, in terms of like, they're adding all this stuff, and this is where I think it gets frustrating for players. To go back to what I said about Poggin's email, is that everybody is just like, I would love more wall variants, and I would love more useful stairs, and I would love this. And then you get, I can't even count them. There's so many. There's like 12 or 14 variants of Blackstone blocks, and they all look the same. Well, the smooth ones, you can tell the difference, but they all look so similar that when the player's like, well, you just gave us 12 new things, but it's really like just giving us one. And I can then really identify with the frustration. So that's my negatives on the Nether update come from the redundancy of some of the additions and the singularity of some of the additions. And that's where I was just like, well, this is supposed to be a game that's supposed to like fuel your imagination, but like, I can't think of any other places to use these things, like the Crimson Woods,
Yeah, I think I'm going to flip the Blackstone thing on its head here and talk not about the texture, but about its functionality, because one of my favorite things about this update now is that a full tool progression is now possible in the Nether without going to the overworld at all. Blackstone functions the same way as cobblestone does in terms of making tools, in terms of making things like furnaces, pistons, so on and so forth. And I think that is really valuable. Along with respawn anchors, that opens up a whole new genre of Nether survival for players. Once you have a respawn anchor, you don't ever need to set foot in the overworld again, provided you can keep it topped up with glowstone, because you can get your stone from the surrounding environment, you can get wood from all of the trees that you find in Warped and Crimson forests, you can get iron nuggets from piglins, you can find nether gold, you can find diamonds in nether fortresses, and potentially even netherite stuff in bastion loot as well. And then you have netherite as a full upgrade from mining ancient debris. So I feel like this update has given us a new way to play Minecraft, a new survival challenge like Skyblock kind of thing, which I think if any update that gives you a new way to play is a good update. I believe that quite firmly, because effectively, yeah, you are prolonging the lifespan of the game by giving players more variations on how they can play. I played a mod pack not too long ago where the whole point was you started in the Nether and you had to find a way to get back to the overworld by acquiring resources. And it was heavily modded, so there was a lot of challenge to be had in the Nether, but effectively, setting your spawn point in the Nether felt like a completely different game. Never seeing the sky for, months at a time felt like a completely different game, and the relief you had when you got back to the overworld was palpable. So I think it's really interesting that with this update, they have added a way to make it possible for players to constantly live sustainably in the Nether without really having to leave unless they want to.
Yeah, I think, again, I'll reiterate that overall, I'm excited about the Nether update. Like, I think the positives outweigh the negatives by, like, in terms of, it's funny. It's almost like we have fewer positives when you look at it on a list, but the weight of them, the biomes, the music,
it's the big concepts. It feels like we're only finding negatives when we get down into the nitty gritty of like which blocks are there,
Yeah.
Which is ultimately a good thing. Going big picture here, then, the new music is beautiful. Lena Raine's done a fantastic job of those new tracks. The new ambient sounds are really refreshing, and they help it feel like a more complete update. Somehow the fact that there is new music makes it feel somehow way more official, even though obviously all of this is official, you know what I mean? But it's not like the Village and Pillage update gave us new music when we stepped into villages. The only music that's been added recently was with the update Aquatic, and then before that, the soundtrack has been the same for super long. So I think it's really cool that we're getting new music, and that really helps increase the atmosphere of the game. We have wanted ambient sounds in the overworld. We used to talk about, birds chirping and seashore noises when you get close to a beach biome, that kind of thing. It seems more plausible that stuff like that will happen, but the Nether needs to feel spooky. It needs to feel atmospheric and like you're being kept on your toes, especially with this update and players spending more time there. So I think those both add a huge dimension to the Nether.
And right up there, while you're talking about ambiance, visually, the ash in basalt deltas, the spores in crimson and warped forests, the blue fire, the soul flame stuff in soul sand valleys. Like, these are all things that are very, the stuff, the ash and the atmosphere and the fog, it's all subtle, but does a lot to kind of add to the immersion of the game.
Yeah.
And I think we were talking earlier about like the bright colors. I think a really good example of a bright color that's useful and versatile is the soul fire. The soul fire lanterns and the soul fire torches and all that kind of stuff. Because it's something that is, because of its nature, because of the light block, it's more flexible. And so those are the kind of things that I'd like to zero in and say, like, there's an example of something bright and different that's usable in multiple contexts.
Yeah, definitely.
Very, very, and I think that I was watching a friend of the show, Whip, doing a build tutorial, because of course now that I'm in a medieval zone, I'm brushing up on all my favorite medieval builders. But I noticed that, one of the things, of course, he uses a lot of campfires in his builds, because the smoke animation just adds so much. And we haven't talked about it in a long time, but the campfire was a huge addition. And it really adds a lot of life to Minecraft, in the same ways that bees do,
Yes.
And I think that a lot of the ambiance that they're adding, while subtle in the Nether, it's not something quite as straightforward as like campfires and bees, but you've got like the particles and the fog and the music, like all of that, I think really adds a lot of life to the Nether, but in a way that's suitable, spooky, void and vast, but not teeming with life, but teeming with life at the same time, if that makes sense.
Yes, totally.
Yeah, because people don't look necessarily, I mean, some people like mushrooms, but people don't look at fungus as like beautiful. It's a wonderful, like I want to go frolic in the fungus. Nope, that's not a thing. But it feels like an aggressive kind of wildlife. Like even though they're very pretty, the crimson forests and stuff, they feel goopy. Like I don't want to live there, but it feels really cool to walk by and go like, wow, that feels very ethereal and weird, but it's not like I don't want to hang a hammock. And hang out.
The crimson roots and warped roots and stuff just feel very unnatural looking as plant life, even though that is nature in the Nether. So that's super cool. Speaking of nature in the Nether, Striders, I feel like, are not necessarily in themselves a feature I'm going to use a whole lot. Because I just fly over lava lakes now, to be quite honest. Once I have Elytra, that's it. And I don't really need to cross lava lakes the rest of the time because I can walk around them. But I feel like what Striders represent is a really great answer to the community demand for a feature that could have been boring and obvious. It could have been just a boat made of iron that is able to cross lava. And instead, we got a unique mob. We got really fun design. It adds to the biology of the Nether, and nobody saw it coming. And I think that, to me, is an example of basically the inverse of what you're talking about with Blackstone, where the community is asking for something, and in a kind of monkey's paw way, you feel like Mojang adds it in a way that you don't feel like you can use. Striders are the opposite of that. Striders are like, hey, wow, there's this really neat new thing that was not necessarily a mechanic I was championing at the bit for, but I know a lot of people were. And hey, let's like amp that up to 100 and say, like, what if there was just this brand new creature that you've never really seen anything like it before? And I think they've got such personality, and I really like them. So they're in the positive column for me, even though I think when it comes to the Nether update, I probably won't use them at all. I feel like I'll put a couple of them in a museum and they'll shiver because they're outside of lava, and then that'll be it.
Yeah. I think I'm with you 100% on all the uniqueness and the clever design, and it feels very Minecrafty. Like it's like the Phantom. It kind of fits in that kind of like, oh wow, okay, that's weird and cool. I just kind of chalk that up to, I have to remind myself that I'm on a legacy server, and they're going to be great for people in new worlds. Like they're going to be great for players, and there are players on the Citadel that don't have Elytra, and really don't like the Nether. So having a safe way to get across a lava lake, I think is going to be fun for some people. But like you, I'm comfortable enough with Minecraft and comfortable enough to fly over lava and stuff like that. And people have heart attacks sometimes on my stream, and they're like, "What are you doing?" It's like, well, I've been playing this for a while. I know where I'm going. Like I'm not going to bump into anything. And
I'm a professional. Calm down, kind of thing.
Yeah. But I can see the appeal for, like, say maybe younger players or players that don't have Elytra, or players that really just don't like the Nether. Like they just find it intimidating and stuff like that. And I'm actually really curious. I'm going to put a call out to our chunk mail contributors. If you are a player that doesn't necessarily get to endgame very much, or if you're relatively new to the game, if you've never been in the Nether or not spent much time, when you do venture to the new Nether in 1.16, like, write us in and let us know. spawnchuckmail@gmail.com. Like, let us know what it is for, like, not the player that's been in the Nether forever, for the last 8 years, but like for the player that goes in there so seldom and has no idea what to expect and what to do when that new Nether hits. What's it like for you? Is it good? Is it bad? Is it more exciting? Is it less intimidating? Do you feel like there's safer places than not? I'm really curious to see how that pans out for new players.
Yes, I feel like our first chunk mail episode after the Nether update is going to be a very interesting one, where we're reading out more people's feedback about what they think of the full update. That's going to be great. Obviously, like, wait until the full update comes around, because we still don't know what could change. But yeah, the thing I want to close out on is something that I feel relatively neutral on, and I'm surprised by that, but I feel like I'm waiting to see what the community thinks of it, and that is Netherite. It was one of the first big surprises, the first thing they didn't really mention at Minecon, but was added along with the new biomes. And to me, it's an interesting way to shake up the status quo for tool progression. You get some extra durability, and you get fire resistance on all of your stuff. I mean, not fire resistance, the effect, but the stuff cannot burn in lava or fire, which means fewer chances to lose your tools. I feel like they've done a good job of managing to avoid players just skipping straight to Netherite unless they want to risk going to the Nether with gold armor and sneaking it out of one of the Bastion remnants, because you can find Netherite stuff in there now. But I think I'm still waiting to see whether the community just embraces it as the new diamond and everything is netherite from now on, and the people who are like, it's going to kill diamonds, are actually right in some level, or if the community sees it as a trivial upgrade and doesn't bother with it. Because I know you said you felt that way, where you're like, I don't really need netherite. It's just like, it's a matter of going and getting it whether or not you are, actually feel like you're in need of it. You don't need the extra point of armor toughness or anything like that, or the extra durability. It's just a matter of the principle of the thing. I will get it because it exists.
Yeah.
So that's the weird part of it to me.
If I find it, I can see myself upgrading a pickaxe, because that would be useful. But I don't see myself wearing it as armor because of just the sheer amount of effort that it would take to deck yourself out.
Yeah.
I like the look of netherite armor better than I like the look of diamond. And I had a lot of new people in the stream this past weekend, so the question came up quite a bit, like, what tools are you using? Because my diamond tool texture looks like iron, a little bit different.
Yeah, it's whiter.
It's different it's different if you're paying attention, but at a glance on a small screen, you'd probably just assume I'm using iron tools. But I definitely am wearing iron armor, and people are just like, wait a minute, I just saw you just strip off your armor and heal some stuff mend some stuff at the Enderman farm, and then you put on iron armor. Like, what the heck is going on? And so I had to answer that question a lot, and I feel like I use iron armor because it makes the game harder for me without making it harder for everyone else on the server. But for me, the netherite and the what's it called, ancient debris, I think the whole concept is interesting and well played as far as adding it to diamond. I think the mistake is how rare it is. I think because it's that rare and that hard to find, it just becomes a time in versus reward out, and I don't think it balances out.
Yeah,
I think there needs to be a better way to get it. I don't necessarily think it has to be crazy. Diamonds are pretty rare in the overworld. If you play the game long enough, you can collect a lot of them, unless you're spending hours and hours and hours mining. And I think that maybe just having, netherite, or sorry, I guess I should say, having ancient debris appear in the nether at the same frequency that diamond appears in the overworld would just make more sense.
Yeah, and I think it kind of goes along with Striders for me as Mojang's way of saying, hey, we can shake this stuff up a little bit. We can take the ideas that you've asked for a while and just put our own twist on them. And I think that's the thing I'm taking away from this, for now at least, is that they've clearly got some ideas of their own and original ways of implementing them. And it really remains to be seen what's going to happen when the full Nether update comes out, which I feel like we should be having this discussion right before it gets released, and we still don't really know when the release is going to happen, but hopefully it'll be soon. Sometime in the next couple of months, we'll start to see, the snapshots winding down into bug fixes, and then we'll get pre-release versions, and then we'll know that the update is finally on its way. Can't wait for that to happen, and really, really looking forward to the show, the kind of retrospective show that we end up doing when we get to talk about the Nether update for real. But for this show, I think that's probably where we're going to wrap it up for today. You can find more information about the show and links to some of the stuff we've talked about at thespawnchunks.com. I had a bunch of notes on the Nether update which we didn't get time to check out, but all of that is going to be in the show notes, so make sure to check those out this week. The music for the show is composed by me, and The Spawn Chunks is proud to be a listener-supported podcast. If you get some value out of the show, why not consider putting some value back in? You can visit patreon.com/thespawnchunks to join our community, where pledging at any level gets you an invite to our patrons-only Discord chat, and now gets you an opportunity to listen to the show live if you are in a time zone that allows you to get up around the same time we do. It also gets us closer to our next milestone goals, which we have a brand new one up on the Patreon page now. We are currently at 171 patrons, always room for more, and I think a couple of people may just be waiting to re-up their pledge after the month kind of rolls over. Special thanks go out to our content engineers, Cameron Sigelski, Goody, Greener Canuck, JD Williamson, Yakov Nastin, and Yitz for your support on this episode.
Sharing the podcast with your friends is the easiest way to support the show. You can find us at the Spawn Chunks on Twitter and Instagram, but a personal recommendation is by far the best way to share the podcast with friends. Wave and shout from across the street and tell them that they should listen to the Spawn Chunks. You can email the show at the new email address, spawnchunkmail gmail.com. Subscribe on iTunes, Android, Stitcher, Spotify, and YouTube. The RSS feed is linked on thespawnchunks.com, and the patron-only RSS feed is on the Patreon page, which is where you can listen to the render distance, the extended version of the podcast.
My name is Jonny, but online I go by Pixelriffs, and you can find most of what I do at youtube.com/pixelriffs, where I attempt to make sense of this crazy and wonderful game in a series called the Minecraft Survival Guide. I also stream 3 days a week on Twitch, doing behind-the-scenes work for the Survival Guide series. Did a Skyblock stream this week as well, just to change it up a little bit. I'm also the voice of the unofficial Hermitcraft recap, which you can find through a quick YouTube search, and aside from that, I'm at Pixelriffs on both Twitter and Instagram. Joel, where can people find you online?
Everything that I'm doing online, including my illustration and design portfolio, is at joelduggan.com. And as I was reminded this weekend on my stream, I published a book in 2012. It's a collection of comic strips. So if you're looking for something to read while you're hanging around at home, as the weather gets nicer and you get to kick your feet up on your porch, check out the store at joelduggan.com and look at the Star-Crossed comic book. There's a solid collection of comic strips if you're so interested. My other podcast is all about sci-fi and fantasy entertainment. You can find that at thecitadelcafe.com. Follow me online at joelduggan just about anywhere. And of course, I am back streaming Minecraft at twitch.tv/joelduggan. Also streamed Industries of Titan last week. Super fun. You guys should check it out.
Thanks for visiting the Spawn Chunks. The world outside is infinite, and somehow it's still expanding.